Hey there, Mama. You're listening to the Lift the Shame podcast. I'm your host, Crystal, mama of 5 and your family's intuitive eating dietitian, here to help you cut through the diet culture clutter so you can enjoy freedom with food as a family. I'm on a mission to help you end the generational legacy of diet culture in your home so you can experience motherhood free from food guilt and body shame. Listen in weekly for guidance on how you can ditch diet culture, heal your relationship with food and your body, and confidently raise intuitive eaters. Let's dive in and lift the shame together. Hey, Mama, welcome back to the show. I so appreciate you being here and tuning in and just being part of this community of parents who are raising kids free from diet culture. I am so thankful that you're here. And the last few weeks, we've just been examining language and how we talk to our kids about food and the impact of the conversations that we have with them about food and their bodies. And today, I kind of wanted to wrap up this series by looking at language from another angle. And this was also sparked just from various conversations that I've been having with my own clients, but also with my own kids as my children are getting older and asking more questions and showing more curiosity about things that they're hearing. I realize sometimes how much we don't know when it comes to parents. That is one thing about parenting, right? It keeps us humble. We realize that there's so many different aspects about parenting that truly we can't always be prepared for. And especially if you are a parent recovering from an eating disorder, or if you're healing your relationship with food, or you're just trying to untangle yourself from this diet culture that we live in order to best support your kids in building a healthy relationship with food, sometimes the map feels invisible, like we don't know what we're doing. We are carving out a path for our family that has never been walked down before. And this is very true when it comes to parenting our kids around food in ways that we probably weren't parented, or having conversations with our kids that don't perpetuate diet culture and really trying to help them examine critically the way that diet culture infiltrates all these different aspects about eating and how we feel about our bodies. This is hard territory to be in, especially if you're navigating it for the first time, which many of us are. Many of us didn't have these types of conversations growing up with our own families. And so it can feel a little bit daunting sometimes to be, again, blazing a trail that was never set before you. And so one thing I've noticed in conversations that I've had with a lot of my own clients and moms that I've worked with is sometimes we can lean on food scripts or narrations to help us learn how to navigate these conversations with our kids. And those are definitely great tools to keep in our toolbox, right? Like when our kids are asking these hard, complex, nuanced questions like, is this healthy for me? Is sugar bad for me? What about fat? Is fat a bad word? All these questions that our kids may be asking can leave us in positions where we're like, oh, I don't know what to say. So many of us are desperate to do right by our children. We don't want our kids to struggle with the same things that we may have struggled with when it came to food and our bodies. And we really want our kids to internalize trust and a belief that their bodies are good and that nothing will ever change that. And so it puts this immense pressure on us as parents to want to do the right things, to want to say the right things. And we're so worried about saying the wrong thing because we don't want to screw our kids up. I wanted to just lean into that as part of our conversation today, because sometimes I think we can rely too heavily on scripts where we're just looking at the script itself as the solution. Like if I just know what to say, like give me a triage. If this situation comes up, I should say X, Y, and Z, or if this situation comes up, then I can say these phrases. And again, don't get me wrong. I think that scripts definitely have a place and a role in learning how to navigate conversations that we've never had before and navigating this uncharted territory per se for so many of us. And I also just wanted to invite this curiosity. Are scripts perhaps preventing you from doing the deeper work that also needs to happen alongside learning how to have these conversations? I think part of this too is I see this a lot on social media where someone might be promoting a set of scripts or phrases that you can use. And I have those too. And I think, again, that it's not about the script itself. Scripts can definitely be useful. However, scripts alone cannot do the work for us, cannot do the internal work of examining our own internal beliefs about food and bodies and helping us heal our own own relationship with food. And ultimately doing that deeper work is what is going to be the most powerful thing in helping our children build that key foundation that they need to support a healthy relationship with food and their bodies. I often see this come up in various scenarios where perhaps you feel like you have a phrase or a tool that you want to say to your child in a different eating situation, or phrases that you can say to launch into a conversation with your child about nuanced topics like fat phobia or dogmatic approaches to food that are highly rooted in diet culture, such as good versus bad. How do we have those conversations with our kids? Or if your child is expressing uncomfortability in their body, how can you navigate those conversations? And again, those scripts can be a great starting point and a place to help us launch into those conversations, but they can't carry us all the way through in terms of being able to hold space for our kids and for us to be able to model the things that we want our children to emulate. And that is where I think scripts can only take us so far. And I see this a lot, especially in interactions with kids where perhaps we're saying something, right? We have the script in mind, we have the phrase in mind that we want to say, but then examining what are our non-verbal cues communicating to our kids. So as an example, if let's say that your child might be a more selective eater and they're not eating the foods that you might prefer to see them eat, they're not willingly choosing to eat vegetables, they're just going for the bread or the dessert and not really interested in eating anything else. And perhaps you've learned that a phrase that you can say to them is, "It's okay. I trust you to eat what you need. You don't have to eat anything that you want." Again, those are great phrases for our kids to hear. But what I often see sometimes is that parents are learning how to say these phrases, but they're still uncomfortable. They're still having a lot of distress coming up for them or things that are being triggered as a result of their child's behavior. And that is being projected through nonverbal cues. And kids are picking up on that. Like, our kids are sponges. They're very attuned to how we feel emotionally. And that is where scripts, again, can only take us so far. Scripts cannot help us manage our distress or our internal discomfort if it's connected to something deeper that we need to work on or heal through. And so we want to essentially be able to get to a place where our phrases or the things that we're saying or the conversations that we're having with our children do also match up with our energy and our presence and how we're showing up for our kids and the messages that our nonverbal cues are communicating to them. And this can show up in different ways. And this is something, again, where I think we have to look at and examine, are we leaning too heavily on scripts as some sort of solution without doing the deeper internal work that can really help us be able to model, again, the behaviors that we want our children to be able to emulate. We want them to internalize these messages. And that is not going to happen just from changing the way that we talk or our language about food or bodies. I mean, it's certainly a first step and one that is important, but it's not the be all end all. And it's just not checkbox that we cross off and move on with our day. It's really an ongoing process and continuous work that we need to be doing and looking at. One example that I thought of just to help illustrate this point, it's almost like if you're planning a meal or planning out a week of meals for your family, and you can take the effort to write those meals out, to check your pantry and see if you have the ingredients on hand, to make sure that you have the things that you need to put these meals together and make a really nice plan to put that plan in place. But if you don't actually go and do the work, order your groceries, make sure that you put that online order or go pick them up or delegate someone to go pick up those groceries for you, and making sure that you've actually prepared the meal and taken the time to put those ingredients together and that meal together, nobody's going to get fed, right? And that's kind of how I look at having scripts, but not doing the internal work. It's sometimes a surface level step, and it is an important step, but it's not the only step. And we also want that to be able to lead us to do the internal work too. We don't want to just lean on scripts or frameworks. And that's another place that I see showing up too, is sometimes looking at a framework, like, just tell me how I'm supposed to feed my kid, or just tell me what I'm supposed to do in this scenario. And in reality, how we feed our kids is very nuanced. There are certainly frameworks that can help us, and we will have more conversations around this because this comes up a lot too. And when it's hard to trust yourself as a parent, especially when you may have found it difficult to trust your body around food because of your own history or because of your own trauma around food and your body, it can be very complicated to now feel like I can trust myself to feed these kids or to help them have a good relationship with food. It's hard to do those things when you're still learning how to trust yourself. And I see that and I understand that. And that is why sometimes scripts and frameworks and X, Y, and Z plans can be so enticing because it feels like a solution to a problem that we're having. And one thing I want you to see as a bigger picture and a broader concept here is that every child has very unique needs. Your child and their individual personality, their individual makeup, their sensory profile and their temperament and their personality, all of these things are very unique and make them different from everybody else. And because of that, there may be some different approaches that you have to take in order to best attune to their individual and unique needs that will support a positive relationship with food and their bodies. And yes, there are frameworks and scripts that can give us a great starting point or give us a place to work from and work with, which is very essential when, again, we're navigating uncharted territory. These are not things that we learned how to do. However, we don't want to just rely on those things because then what I see is that it gets really frustrating when our child doesn't fit this criteria or fit this box, or now we're presented with a different situation where we feel like we don't have the script that we need. What do we do? And it becomes so easy to rely on external sources to tell us how to parent, to tell us how to feed our kids. And essentially, that can almost be a replica of what diet culture is. I mean, diet culture essentially is external rules or guidelines to tell you how to eat, what to do with your body. And that really takes us away from our intuition, from our inner knowing, from our inner wisdom of how to navigate eating, how to navigate parenting. And you have that wisdom within you. You do. And so much of us have internalized these messages that our bodies can't be trusted, that we can't be trusted. And that is where I see this area becoming problematic when we're just too heavily relying on external sources to tell us how to parent or tell us how to feed our kids to a point that it's causing us to miss the individual or unique needs that our child has. It's almost like too much programming that doesn't allow us to be attuned to our unique child in front of us. And everyone is going to be different. Everyone has unique needs and every family has unique needs. And we want to be attuned and responsive to those rather than just too heavily relying on those external sources to tell us what to do or how to do it. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of that today because, again, it's been coming up in a lot of conversations, or I'll get various questions, which I love. And I think these are important conversations to have. But asking, what do I say? My child said this or my child said that. I actually just recently, my 9-year-old, I heard her talking to my 7-year-old saying, don't say the F word. And my ears immediately perked up because I thought she was referring to a 4-letter F word that rhymes with duck. And I was like, whoa, we need to have some conversations here. But she was actually referring to the word fat and thought that saying fat was a bad word. And that became a whole conversation in itself. And if you're interested in hearing how I navigated that conversation with my kids, let me know. I'd love to maybe do a separate episode on that because we had a great conversation. We talked about some very nuanced concepts around here. I never knew that my daughter thought that until she actually said that. And so it was a great opportunity to have a conversation, and certainly different concepts and things that I've read in my own healing work helped me have that conversation with her. However, I could never have that conversation with her if I never worked on my internalized fat phobia that results from being entrenched in diet culture and growing up in diet culture. We all have that within us, and no script is going to do that work for you. And so that was something that came up for me and something that I'm realizing. I love helping parents learn how to navigate these things. And I also want to encourage you to not stop there. Don't let a script be the only solution or part of your solution. Be willing to do the inner work so that you can fully show up for your child and be able to navigate these complicated issues with them, because that is ultimately what is going to help you dismantle diet culture from your family and shift out of these cycles so that that's not your legacy legacy anymore. It really starts with us and the inner work of doing the deeper work together. And you're not doing it alone. I can guarantee that there's hundreds of parents tuning in and excited about learning these things in order to better show up for our kids, because we want them to have a different experience. We want them to internalize different truths and the reality that their body is good and nothing's going to change that. And again, scripts are only one piece of that puzzle. So I want to leave you today on today's episode talking through 3 ways that you can do the inner work, because the journey isn't easy. And I want you to know that you're not alone. And I'd love to give you some tools to help you navigate this process. So I distilled it to 3. There's definitely a lot more that we could talk about, but just wanted to narrow it down to give you some pointers and things to think about. So tip number 1 is just learning how to cultivate compassion for yourself. Sometimes we hear these things and it feels like I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I'm not doing enough. And that can create a lot of shame. And we cannot create effective change for ourselves or for our family if we are leading from a place of shame. It's really important to start from a place of compassion for yourself and just remembering, look, you didn't have this modeled to you. Nobody taught you or showed you how to do these things, and you're figuring them out. And that's okay. It's okay that it's imperfect. It's okay that it's messy. It's okay that you don't always feel like you're getting it right. That is not criteria for doing the work. Doing the work is actually a very messy process. And it's important to give yourself grace and compassion to do the work and to get your hands dirty and to be able to figure things out. Otherwise, it is too paralyzing if you're always worried about making mistakes, and that is going to keep you stuck. And so I love this thought, or just this encouragement of leading with compassion, just reminding yourself that you're learning how to do this. You're learning things that you've never learned before, and that ultimately will allow you to better show up for your children and cultivating that empathy for yourself. It's hard. And again, when you're trying to untangle and undo generations of this rhetoric and this legacy of bodies being bad, or bodies being something that we have to micromanage, or food is bad. I mean, we're talking about decades and years of this type of dogma that we're trying to heal from and learn from. And you can't expect yourself to have it all figured out perfectly. So that is my first tip. I know that hearing a lot of things can sometimes feel like another to-do list, like, oh my gosh, I got to do all these things. But please go gently with yourself. Give yourself so much compassion and lead with compassion. And sometimes I think it can be helpful to actually materialize this by writing things out that resonate with you and that really align with your values as a parent, and knowing that you are learning. I think when we can frame it in that way, that I'm learning, it gives yourself permission to make mistakes and to not have it figured out. Just in the same way that we watch our kids learn new skills, we don't expect them to meet perfectionistic standards. Those are arbitrary, and those don't help serve them and give them a safe space to learn how to explore and develop their skills. So just in the same way that you would extend that to your kids, I want to encourage you to extend that to yourself as well, because you're not going to be able to do the work if you're leading from a place of shame. So keep that in mind as you're navigating it. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is being willing to explore this process of reparenting yourself around food and your body. I actually did a whole episode on this, and I will link to that episode in the show notes for you so you can go back and listen. And I'm going to hopefully be creating some more resources and guides for you in terms of how to reparent yourself around food and your body. It's really hard to show up for our kids in ways that we have not yet shown up for ourselves. And so often, this is where I see the mismatch of scripts versus our actions showing up, is when we're saying things that don't align with what we actually believe as truth for ourselves yet, right? Like we're trying to tell our kids something, but in reality, their behavior or their body or their appetite or their food preferences is actually triggering to us, and it's bringing up a well of emotion within us. And it's really helpful to be able to, again, examine those things with awareness and with compassion, and just noticing like, oh, I'm watching my daughter eat, or I'm watching my son eat, and how they're eating right now is really bringing up some anxiety within me. And instead of shaming yourself for feeling that way, really getting curious about what that emotion might be connected to. And typically, and again, I'm generalizing here from my own anecdotal experience, but what I see is that those reactions are connected to deeper parts of us that still need some TLC and some healing work, right? For example, sometimes behaviors that our kids engage in are replicas of behaviors that we may have engaged in as children, and we may have been reacted to those behaviors in harmful ways, or our parents reacted to us in harmful ways. And so we never learned how to cope with that or heal through that, or now it's something that's associated with a lot of shame or guilt. And so there's a lot of parallel processing when it comes to feeding our kids or watching them do things that are very characteristic of things that we may have done as children, but were reacted to in harmful ways. Another thing I see here for a lot of parents is watching your child's body change. And for so many parents that I've worked with, that can also be triggering for a time in your life as a child when your body changed, and that kind of set off the alarms for your caregivers. And for example, let's say that you were put on a diet as a young age, or your parents started making comments, or you started getting comments from kids at school about your body changing at a certain age. That can feel like sticky territory when your child also approaches or goes through that same phase or age themselves. So there's a lot of meaning to the triggers and reactions that we have to our kids around food and body. And this is where scripts alone are not going to do that inner healing work for you. We can know what to say in those situations because scripts maybe have provided a resource to help us. But if we're not healing, if we're not doing that inner healing work, again, it's going to bring up distress within us that our kids will be attuned to. So it's like we're saying something, but our body is reacting in a different way. And we can learn how to manage that distress more effectively if we're able to tune in and address those parts of us that may still be wounded or may still be needing some healing work. And that is where I like to call it reparenting yourself around food and your body. And that can start by essentially asking yourself, what did you need at that age? What did you need when you were 8 years old and your parent wanted to put you on Weight Watchers? Or your parent told you that you couldn't have dessert, or that you had to eat the vegetables before you ate anything else, or that you had to clean your plate? What did you need at those ages when there may have been trauma around food in your body? And that can give you a clue as to what you still need now. You still need to address those parts of you that was wounded at those ages and that may still need that TLC, again, to help you better show up for your kids. Because all the scripts in the world are not going to change those reactions. Those reactions are coming from a place within you that is still wounded and needing more support. So that is my challenge to you with this tip, is just looking at this aspect of reparenting and asking yourself, what are some things that I needed? How can I still attend to those parts of myself that needed that help, that needed a safe caregiver to show up for me and to just hold space for my body and for my appetite? All the things that you're trying to do for your child, also, you are deserving of those things too. And you may have not had those for your children or for yourself growing up, which is why it can be hard and challenging and feel triggering to try to give those things to your kids now. And so that is where doing that deeper work can help you show up in a more expansive way for your children. And this is hard. This is a whole process within itself. And I would definitely encourage you, if you can recognize that, whoa, there's been some significant things happening, and I know that I could use some more support around this. This can be really helpful to speak with someone, to talk to a professional, to join a support group. We still have our free virtual support group and community called Lift the Shame, which is a group for moms in eating disorder recovery who are navigating so many of these things, talking with a counselor. I mean, this can look like many different things for you. And so I just want to encourage you to reach out, ask for help. You don't have to do this alone. It's definitely more complex. And I think talking through some of these things and working through these things can help you better heal through them. And in my reparenting podcast episode, I do reference some journal questions just to help you get started in thinking and processing through these things. So I hope that gives you just a launching point as you're peeling apart these layers and just learning how to better show up, not just for your kids, but for yourself too. Because like I said, you are deserving of that healing too. So last tip here is just challenging any internalized fat phobia or weight stigma. This is a big one. And I don't think we realize, again, how much of this can be within us because just by nature of the culture that we live in that really centers and glorifies one particular type of body, weight stigma and fat phobia are everywhere. And it's hurting our kids. It's hurting us. It's causing us to get stuck in this diet culture mentality. And it really requires a lot of internal work and reflection to be able to dismantle this type of mentality that many of us have grown up in. And it can be even harder if, let's say, you're parenting and your partner isn't on board, or your partner is highly fat phobic and very stuck in diet culture or really actively dieting. It can be really hard to piece this puzzle apart when the people around you are essentially an echo chamber of the diet culture that we live in. So it can be hard. It can feel isolating. It can feel lonely. It can feel like you're the fish swimming upstream, and it's very countercultural because, again, diet culture is mainstream. It is what everyone believes. I'm saying that to generalize. And so it does require internal work to think about your beliefs, to think about any judgments or notions that you have about people in larger bodies or seeing kids in larger bodies. What does that bring up for you? And understanding how fat phobia impacts the way that we feed and show up for our own kids. This is actually where I tend to see a lot of subconscious restricting happening for children, not to intentionally hurt them, because I know that it's not what parents are doing. But, we have this inherent belief that if we can somehow micromanage our kids' body size or keep them small, then it will protect them from the ferocious diet culture that they will encounter inevitably. And diet culture is harsh, and fat phobia is harsh. And we see this at young ages where kids are making fun of kids in larger bodies and all this negative rhetoric that is terrible. We want to do everything we can to protect our kids from that. But trying to micromanage how they eat or what they eat or shrink their body is not protecting them from diet culture. It's siding with it, and it's essentially giving in to those messages. And I know that's not what you want for your kids. You want your kids to build resilience to those messages that will tell them they can't take up space, or that their body is too much, or that they're too much. I know that you want to do everything in your power to help your kids build resilience to those messages so they can call BS and say, nope, that's not true. And they can distinguish truth from falsehood, and they can peel apart diet culture and call it out for all the lies that it is. And this has to start with us. We have to be the ones to examine our own internalized fat phobia and to be able to do the work of dismantling that for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll never be able to do that for our kids. And again, this is a process. This is something that requires a lot of self-awareness, self-examination, being willing to peel away the layers. And oftentimes those layers develop as a form of protection because, again, the world is harsh towards people in larger bodies. And this idea that we can somehow micromanage our kids' body sizes to get them to fit the arbitrary standards that diet culture has created for them is absolutely false. And it will always create more harm than good. It will separate them from their innate intuitive eating abilities, and it will not allow them to flourish into the person that they're meant to be. And we don't want to interfere with that. And so this requires in challenging and examining our own internalized beliefs around food, around bodies, around, what does it look like to be healthy? What is health? All of those things are really important to examine. And I know that this is hard. And like I said, it's not easy, but the process of doing this allows us to dismantle it and build resilience to the messages and the damaging messages that we will hear and our children will hear. So those are my tips for you. And I just want to end by saying that and reiterating that it's okay to do this work messy. Don't expect perfection. Don't feel I know you feel the pressure to have to get it all right, but that's not the criteria of what our kids need in order to build a healthy relationship with food. Your kids need to see you be human and need to see you figuring figuring this stuff out. And that gives them permission to also be human and to make mistakes and to know that it's okay if we don't get it right, but let's find the answer together. Let's figure this out together, and knowing that they're not alone and you're doing the work, you're doing the important work, and we can't expect it to look a certain way in order to be effective. So let yourself get messy in doing the work and give yourself permission to make mistakes. And just remember that there is so much power in repair with our children. And I love this because I think, again, we have this pressure to I need to say everything right. And that's why sometimes we too heavily rely on scripts. But sometimes it's more powerful for us to make a mistake and then allow our kids to be part of the repair process than to just always say the right thing all the time, right? I know for me growing up, that was something I never heard. I never heard a caregiver apologize or say, you know what, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Let me figure out how I can make this right. I never heard that. And that had a huge impact on how I felt about relationships and myself and my body. And, that's something I'm trying really hard to do with my own kids, and also just give myself permission to do. That it's okay for us to make mistakes, but to let our children be part of the repair process. We may say things that we don't mean. We may accidentally slip and say, oh, are you really sure you need another bite of that? Come on, it's too much now. You need to stop, right? We might say those things out of our own discomfort and out of us still untangling the things that we're working through and healing from. But we can always come back to our child and do the repair work with them. And again, sometimes there's more power in that for them to be able to see us admit our mistakes and to see us admit the errors of our ways and let them see us learning and growing and trying to do better, right? Coming to them and saying, you know what, honey, I said this earlier and it wasn't right. And I just want you to know that I trust you and I love you and I believe in you wholeheartedly. And mommy is learning and mommy is growing and I'm figuring this out. And I'm sorry. Sometimes that repair work is so much more powerful for our kids to hear and to be part of than, like I said, always feeling like I'm saying I have to say the right thing out of the gate all the time. So I hope this gives you some food for thought. I will stick some resources in the show notes for you, just some books that I've read that have been really helpful to me on my journey, and some other podcasts that hopefully can be helpful to you. And I would love to hear from you, just your thoughts. What do you think about this? What questions do you have? I just want you to know that I really appreciate you and your openness. And it takes a lot of self-awareness and it takes some open-mindedness to be able to hear things like this that are not aligned with what culture is saying that we should be doing, what we should be saying. And so I just want to acknowledge your hard work, and just the fact that you're listening to this shows how much you care, and your kids are so lucky to have you. So kudos to you. You are doing amazing work, and just know that I'm cheering you on, and I would love to just learn if there's certain things that I can continue to shed light on here on the podcast. You're always welcome to connect with me via email, hello@crystalcargis.com, or you can reply to the weekly newsletters that go out, or connect with me on Instagram, whatever works for you. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you for your time, and I can't wait to see you next week. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Lift the Shame podcast. For more tips and guidance on your motherhood journey, come connect with me on Instagram @crystalcargis. Until next week, Mama, I'll be cheering you on. Bye for now.